Hey everybody, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the world right now, and let's try get on top of some of the crazy rumors going around and the thought experiments that result of that. And I always say, like it or not, I'm not political in any way, shape, or form, but Bitcoin and politics are inextricably linked, and you cannot change that. That's why sometimes we are forced to discuss these topics. So let's jump in. This is going to be called reserve asset, little price analysis. What if a big country like the US added some Bitcoin to the balance sheet? And there's so much scuttlebutt going on now. It's insane. We also have a lot of big twists. Jamie Dimon is no longer a Bitcoin critic, and he slammed it for like 8 years straight. It was insane. The market cap's 2.33 trillion, volume at 70 billion. We'll talk about a lot of billions today as well. And fear and greed down to 61. It did rocket higher yesterday, but then it's kind of come back down to earth. So let's jump in. Of course, this is not financial advice. Shout out to everybody on Patreon. Thank you as well, TND Tesla and Sean Donnelly for being here. And yesterday, I did do a video yesterday about the UBS Global Wealth Report. The data comes from that report, but I did have a mistake in my slides, and I apologize for that. I was off by 1-0, 1 decimal point move. So I did say a mistake. So sorry. This is a correction. The actual Bitcoin holdings for Blackrock are 0.193% of their assets under management. Somehow on my spreadsheet, I had 1.08 trillion instead of 10.8 trillion. Screw up. That's how things happen. But again, it's corrected. So let's talk about Bitcoin real quick. Bitcoin monthly returns only up 2% for July. Kind of come a bit down to earth right now. Maybe there's some gentle release of some Mt. Gox stuff happening. I'm not sure. But there is some crazy stuff happening behind the scenes. And we'll get into that in a minute, especially with some charts proving the case. But let's talk about the news first, because there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes we need to be aware of. First of all, this is massive. Jamie Dimon flips on Bitcoin. He has changed his tune. Again, Trump reveals JP Morgan CEO sudden Bitcoin and crypto flip amid huge price surge. We're going to come back to this at the very end of the show, so watch this space carefully. Also, Blackrock is still going hard. This is from Hey Apollo. Blackrock snagged another 1,708 Bitcoin yesterday alone. One firm, 4 times daily miner issuance, one day. Big. And Mark Cuban everybody's has their opinion right now on exactly what's going on, but this is interesting. Mark Cuban says Silicon Valley's bet on Trump is a Bitcoin play. Now, I have no idea what his political affiliation is, left or right or in the middle or basketball or whatever. I don't know. But this is interesting. You know, the, again, inextricable link between politics and Bitcoin. Now he's placing a link between Silicon Valley and innovation, and entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, and Bitcoin as well. Who knows? There's a lot of connective tissue always everywhere. And one thing you have to learn about the world is everything is connected, and there's no such thing as coincidence. Also, another breaking news too, Bitcoin Treasury is now an opportunity for many. U.S. corporations now hold an all-time high $4.11 trillion in cash. That is insane. Literally, if these U.S. corporations alone took their cash, they could buy 4x the market cap of Bitcoin pretty much. Just think about that. That's how much $4.11 trillion is melting away on a balance sheet. Anyway, this brings us to this whole concept of what should firms do, and what should treasuries do, and what should central banks or Fed do, etc. And this is what everybody is chatting about like crazy. Hence this video. This is from Dennis Porter, developing news. According to Dennis Porter's sources, President Trump will announce a U.S. Bitcoin strategic reserve at Bitcoin 2024. This is next week in Nashville, and it's going to be big. I think it's next week in Nashville. I don't know. I don't even know what day it is today, so every day is the same for me. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. This is crazy. Let's get into the tweet from Dennis Porter, and a great follow, by the way, on Twitter. Adding Bitcoin as a strategic reserve to the US Treasury is a no-brainer, and once the USA does it, the paradigm will shift and the world will understand they must also have a Bitcoin position. Thank you, Kelly. Now, one of the main arguments in favor of Bitcoin as a reserve asset is, of course, the potential hedge against inflation. And unlike fiat currencies, which can be subject to inflationary pressures due to central bank money printing, which you know all about if you watch this channel, Bitcoin does have that fixed supply. So, there are some treasuries that hold different fiat currencies. Some treasuries hold gold. But what's interesting about Bitcoin is because of its decentralized nature and independence from any single government or institution, it makes it a unique asset that is not tied to the fortunes of any other country. And this could provide the US Treasury with a new level of diversification that is simply not possible with traditional reserve assets like foreign currencies or gold or whatever else. This is the game changer. And if I was running a treasury or running a country, I'd do this in a heartbeat like years ago. But sometimes it's hard for governments to do that because they do have their infinite money printer. And, embracing things like Bitcoin could hobble that unless you've got a lot of courage to push something else through. So that's where we are right now. And what I'm going to do is do some calculations as to what would the impact of this be. So shout out as well to Cal Exit the Matrix, who inspired me with this question this morning. What if, what if the US were to do something like match Chinese gold reserves with a similar amount of Bitcoin instead of gold? So we broke down some numbers here. And again, bear in mind, everybody, there's a million ways to skin this problem. This is just one example of a treasury asset, which is gold. We'll get back to gold in a minute as well. But what would happen if they put the same ratio of that gold instead in Bitcoin? And how much would the governments need to buy? So, US Bitcoin holdings, they have 215,000. Germany had 50,000, but they sold them all in 3 weeks. That's a separate story. China has 190,000 Bitcoin. Now, 215,000 Bitcoin is only 13.7 billion. That's about what the US sends to the Ukraine every week. Maybe less, I'm not sure. But it's not a lot of money to the US as a country. US gold reserves, about 543.6 billion. Chinese gold reserves, 170 billion. Now, if you calculate the US Bitcoin to gold ratio, it's about 2.5%. And the China Bitcoin to gold ratio is about 7.1%. So that is kind of where we are. Let's plug these into our little model, first of all. And before we do that, though, let's talk about what China, the largest bank in the world, did say yesterday. World's largest bank, ICBC, says Bitcoin solves gold's problem of divisibility and being inconvenient to carry. Again, speaking of gold, China, USA, Bitcoin solves a lot of problems. So let's dig into the first scenario. If the US matches China's Bitcoin gold ratio, to reach China's 7.1% Bitcoin to gold ratio, the US would need to increase Bitcoin holdings by about 605,896 Bitcoin, which means they'd have to buy about 390,000. And at the current price, if they could buy them at 63.7, that'd be 24.9. Actually, I haven't checked the Bitcoin price yet. It could be 64K now as I am speaking live. Let's find out. Make sure the price is hanging up there somehow. Bear with me 1 second. Bitcoin price 63.6, so it's gone up $200 since this was done. Anyway, that's the first scenario. The second scenario is they double the China Bitcoin gold ratio. So if you're going to do this, you might as well do it with a substantial percentage and get away from gold altogether, or even pair trade gold into Bitcoin. Gold bugs, eat your hearts out. Who knows? That could also be possible. Imagine what that would do to the price of gold. Anyway, if they would have to increase their Bitcoin holdings to about 1.211 million Bitcoin, buy another 996,000 Bitcoin at the current price of $63.5 billion. By the way, all the ETFs and ETPs around the world own now over 1.05 million Bitcoin. So buying this bag would be equivalent to what all the ETFs and ETPs currently hold today. Let's break down the pricing model of scenario 1. This is the US to match China's 7.1% Bitcoin to gold ratio. And I have my 21 multiplier, which I used in 2021, coincidentally. And that was calculated by looking at the Tesla Bitcoin buy and the impact on price. Then the pre-halving multiplier of 56, and then the post-halving multiplier of 112. If that is the case, and the US spends $25 billion on Bitcoin, assuming the price stays equal, they will buy 389,000 Bitcoin approximately. And the future price with the 21 multiplier would go to 98,000. With the 56 multiplier be 156. That's coincidence, actually. 156,000 out of 56 multiplier. That is just a chance. And I did say there's no such thing as coincidences. Who knows? And 112 would take us to $250,000. But imagine they go a little deeper and they double that reserve with Bitcoin. It would be a real gutsy move. They'd have to buy 1 million Bitcoin. What would that do to the Bitcoin price? Well, you can see here again, same multipliers, 21, 56, and 112. Remember, the more demand, the thinner the air, the more scarce it is, the more price goes up. Therefore, if it is just a 21 multiplier from 2021, it'd be 153,000. The 56 multiplier would be 302,000. And 112 multiplier would be 540,000, halfway to $1 million. And that is interesting. But the other thing that you have to bear in mind is, if this was to happen, big if, everybody, tinfoil hat firmly attached, you know what would happen next? Is game theory. I did this video in October 2021. I talked about Bitcoin game theory and what it would mean for Bitcoin, the price. And the numbers aren't fundamentally very different from where they are today, which is fascinating. Once game theory kicks in, things will get bonkers really, really fast. And we have somebody who maybe knows something special. And I tweeted this yesterday. Today's dose, 17 hours ago, in fact. Today's dose of hopium. His conviction in Bitcoin is unshakable. Gotta admire his huevos. I don't know why I wrote that at the time. Anyway, this is from Samson Mao. You may doubt Bitcoin will reach 1 million within the next year, but you'll see. Samson Mao. So Samson Mao also works with nation states and helps them adopt a Bitcoin standard as well. And maybe he knows something, or maybe he's done some calculations around this Treasury asset, which would trigger this game theory, which would easily put the price of Bitcoin to $1 million in a year if all of those things happen. So there's a lot of ifs there. But remember, keep your tinfoil conspiracy theory hat firmly attached. But I'll also say stranger things have happened, and show me a conspiracy theory that didn't turn out to be true. There you go. So let's get into some charts after all of that excitement. Let's look at the Bitcoin chart and try to figure out where we're going next. This is a cool chart here from Mr. Crypto. And it's basically a liquidity analysis of where it is laying. As you can see, look for everything like yellow and bright green. That is where the liquidity is. That's where the market makers hunt. There's nothing down below. They've all been wiped out. All the longs have been wiped out. Now, to hunt some Bitcoin, you have to go after the shorts. And that is way above from where we are now at 63, 64K. So either way, per this chart, if history repeats, it tells you Bitcoin is going higher. Now, another strange thing happened as well in the last couple of hours. Well, if you look at this chart here, you'll see two big dates. First of all, the 5th of July, about $4 billion worth of Bitcoin was withdrawn from exchanges, which coincided with the price of Bitcoin going up from 56 to 65K almost in a very short window of time. And then yesterday, an additional $3.4 billion worth of Bitcoin was withdrawn from exchanges when the price was around 65K. So if history repeats, not saying that it will, but if this pattern repeats, Bitcoin price is also going up. Who knows? We shall see. Now, the other thing that's from the TBL, which is the Bitcoin Layer report. It was a really cool chart here. Shout out to Sanjay as well for getting it to me this morning. And I already also have the Substack too, which is awesome. But this is how they build what they call TBL liquidity, the Bitcoin Layer liquidity. What they do is they have a composite score. It has the Fed's assets, U.S. commercial banking assets, ECB assets, People's Bank of China assets, China banking assets for domestic banks, Bank of Japan assets, and the MOVE index. And then they add all that together and get a total amount. And as you can see, the purple is going up. And the Bitcoin price tends to follow the purple when it goes up. We know China is going to start printing like mad, and this will bring about a lot of liquidity, which also should inflate the Bitcoin price as we go forward. So that's another piece of little good news. And also, we know, I covered, I think, yesterday on Oppty or Tuesday. I don't remember what day it was. But I talked about now we have a 100% chance of a rate cut in September. 100%. But the question is what happens after that and how fast do they cut? Either way, we do expect 3 cuts by January 2025, which will help kick things into high gear as well. How to crypto? Hello there. Good to see you. So a lot of things are happening kind of behind the scenes. Will the rate cuts hit more quickly and in larger size than expected? If that is the case, that could actually typically be a scary situation because that would mean we're probably in a recession. And there are already so many alarm signals going off in the macro world. I think Jerome Powell and the Fed and the Treasury, they see these problems and therefore they want to get ahead of it and say, okay, let's start cutting these things before we break things. Not that they're not all broken already, but the amount of damage that could come could be even more intense. Let's get into the Bitcoin black hole and a little treasure egg at the very end of this too. Let's look at day 130. Wow, it's hard to believe. 130 days of pumping numbers into this sheet. But hey, why not? But it has been a good week so far. We have had 9 positive days, even with big grayscale dumpage. This is the macro look. You can see red is popping, which is Blackrock. That's kind of like their big next round of accumulation. Looks like it's happening. And again, you have to understand how these firms think and how they manage money and what they tell their clients to do. That is a big part of it. So let's talk about the Power Series now. 9 days up. The ETFs took in $2 billion in just 9 days. A very, very short window of time. So again, it looks like we're at this new accumulation range I spoke about yesterday. This is how many Bitcoin were taken from the system yesterday, 932. Although this is including a huge dump from Grayscale. So Bitcoin bought, or BlackRock. I called BlackRock Bitcoin. Nearly 1,800 Bitcoin, which is insane. And these are the stages of accumulation. I believe we are in stage 3 after 130 days, and we'll see if this continues. Again, we might have a negative day thrown in there. It's invariable, especially when you get to 9 positive days in a row. Typically, it goes as far as 11 or 12, and then there's a negative day, and then we reset the clock. But overall, the big chunks of money are important to look at. And Grayscale had a big dump yesterday, but they continue to dump. Speaking of Grayscale too, there is an ETH ETF coming, probably this week or early next. And they're keeping their fees at 2.5%. So expect the ETH ETF not to pump the ETH price because there'll be huge dumpage. Nobody's going to be holding that at 2.5%, just like we saw with with Grayscale and Bitcoin. I expect the same thing to happen again. I don't know why they do this. They try to milk it for what they can when all the competition will be far less. Anyway, all the ETH will drain from one bag to probably another. And just remember, everybody, these two people, whether you love them or hate them, and I know a lot of Bitcoin maxis don't like these two. They don't trust the big bad Wall Street. However, these two are the 2 biggest players in the game. And now they're both looking hard at Bitcoin. And I don't know if it's because of this Treasury asset rumor. If that does happen, these folks will definitely want to be part of it. and also help secure the network, which means be part of more of the Bitcoin miners too. And a lot of everything is completely linked, like we said before. Hope you like the story. Let's see how this plays out. Either way, I'm old enough and wise enough to know where there is smoke, there is fire. So everybody, let's hope for some fire. Hope you like the show. Hit the like if you did. Get the message out there for those that may not be on the train. Thank you as well, Sean Donnelly and T&D Tesla. Hope you like it. See you later. Bye-bye.